Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the political scene. It was 60 years ago that the course of American politics and history was changed when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Now, we also know that he was running for re-election. And then 60 years later, we have the oldest man ever elected president running for re-election. When Kennedy was first elected, there was criticism that he was too young for the office. Joe Biden is being criticized, even from within his own party, of being too old to be reelected. So, Jim, I don't think that criticism is going to go away as the next year. At this point, the president will be 82.
And if the polls hold and Donald Trump stays on the ticket, he'll be 77. Age will be a conversation that all of us have had on this program and others have had prior to the president even being elected. Age was a factor in his election in 2020. Age was a factor with Ronald Reagan, who swatted it back masterfully when it was brought up back in the 80s. How much of an issue it will be remains to be seen. We've all talked about the age of both of these candidates. It is a concern. It continues to be a concern. Whether or not that changes the current dynamic and whether or not Mr. Biden will or will not be the nominee, he likely will be the nominee, are things that over the next several months will unfold. But yes, it's not going to go away. It's always been there since he stepped up to run for president, and it's not going to disappear in the next 11 months.
There are young and old 80-year-olds. I can tell you the president is an old 81 and Trump is a young 76. So we'll see how it all plays out. But guys, the party's over. 70% of the American people, over 70% in polling, don't think he's running the country anymore. An equal amount of people, if not more, believe that he should not stand for a second term. It's really, the die has been cast. It's going to be a determination of this president and the Democratic machinery and the National Party when they're going to make the announcement that he's going to step aside. But there is no way in heck that this man's going to stand for re-election in this diminished capacity, mental and physical capacity that he's faced, especially in the last 6 or 8 months. Compounded by the fact that recent polls now have him in the lowest approval rating of his presidency, 40%. His approval on foreign policy, which is largely in the hands of the American presidency, are completely dismal, record lows. And worse than of all maybe is what I would consider a pretty liberal network, NBC, coming out with that recent poll that on a head-to-head matchup with the former president, he's losing at this point. That was always the reason, we're going to keep him in there because he's beating Trump and Trump's going to be your nominee. Well, that isn't even the case anymore. So the case is starting to compound for the president. And I do think by before early next year or in the first quarter of next year, you're going to see the president step aside for a younger generation of Democratic leadership.
But I have to chime in there, Keith. I don't see anybody in the Democrat Party right now going and saying, Mr. President, you can't run anymore. You need to step down. You need to, open it up, let other people get in there because you're hurting the party as a whole. I don't see anybody. And I'd ask my 2 Democrat friends if they see anybody that's willing to step up and tell a president, you can't run.
I see
Donald Rumsfeld was criticized for saying at one time that you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. We have 2 old guys running for president. That's the deal. Okay. And until that changes, we have 2 old guys running for president. Now, mentally and emotionally, I would put Joe Biden up against Donald Trump any day of the week, any minute of any day. Donald Trump has lost it intellectually, whatever he had, and he's dangerous to compound things. So, if that's the choice America has, my money's on Joe Biden. But I agree with Keith. I'd be surprised if that's the ticket come that critical moment when everybody has to decide who's going to run.
If the choices are an old Democrat who's a steady hand and has people around him making sure that the Constitution is protected and the government is moving, versus an older man who may appear to be more energetic but has lost whatever little bit of common sense he may have possibly had and is totally off the rails, advantage Democrat.
I'm going to throw this out to you. We're over time already, but I want to throw this out and have somebody answer it. And that is, part of the criticism of Joe Biden's age is that if he does not make it through his second term, that would mean Kamala Harris would become president of the United States. The polls indicate that she is even lower in public support than President Biden. So if he could make a change in the vice presidency, would that make a difference, you think, to the American public in supporting Biden for another term?
That's a very difficult political move for him to make right now. He would have a hard time making that change without doing some damage to the base he brought to the table in the first place. So there would have to be some safe haven for her, some perhaps promotion of sorts in order for him to make a move like that.
All right, great. We need to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.